Okay.
It's a new one. Okay.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. It's Ron. Get started this Saturday morning. We were last few sessions actually talking about forgiveness and led to fear. And Sheldon led us last week and kind of shed some new light on some things, open up some other things. But we've been looking at forgiveness and looking at it in detail. And as we discussed, there is a reason for it. I guess there's as we further along in this journey that we're in, we see the further need for forgiveness, not only from us but for the universe, and it continues to be of utmost importance as we respect and understand what we put in the macro, what that means for mankind. So start off today, see if we have any questions about anything that may have been spoken already or any other questions. If you don't mind, I'll start off with a question that someone sent to me that from a previous conversation, and we'll go from there. Okay. It says in a recent discussion, Pastor said the worst racists are the Democratic liberals, but he didn't explain it. So I'm going to ask him to kind of, if he remembers that, to go into it a little bit and bring us some explanation there. Sure. You don't.
Well, actually, I think I said the white Democratic liberals are the most dangerous racists because they don't see themselves as being racist, and they do absolutely nothing to end systemic racism. They are the ones who say it must be done in increments. Well, we've been waiting for freedom in increments for how long? What, 500-600 years or more in this country in particular. And when we think about how liberals speak, everybody is a racist except them. And it is impossible for anyone to grow up and be educated in America in particular and not be racist, because the whole educational system is designed to be racist. The Democratic liberals will talk about systemic racism, but they do absolutely nothing to change it. You don't change systemic racism by marching in the streets. You change systemic racism by supporting policy changes rather. And when you voting at the polls and making campaign speeches do not change systemic racism. And the other part of it is this: the liberals believe that when you change people's mindset by getting them to see how denigrating it is for Africans to live in this society, things change. Well, the Brown versus the Board of Education, Topeka, was to end segregation. And what we see now is that the schools are more segregated now than they were doing before Brown versus anyway. We find that the Board of Education, we see that they are more segregated now. Why are they more segregated? Because systemic racist policies did not change. And these systemic racist policies allowed for public funding of private schools. And systemic racism used redlining to make sure that white kids did not have to go to school with African kids. So when you look at it, in small towns, where there is only one school district, you see more of an integrated system, but the overwhelming majority of educational systems in this country are just as segregated as they were from the beginning. And it goes on from there, because we are constantly told that we can't get all this done at one time, but no one is trying to get anything done at any time. And I'm speaking of the liberals, of course. If you are a liberal, white liberal, then you need to be organizing blocks of votes within your community in order to change, to put people in office who change policies. And if they don't change the policy, then candidates must be found or located who will change policies. That's why I say liberals are the most the most dangerous racists in the country.
Thank you. Any questions, y'all, comments?
I thought the Democrats ended racism when Nancy Pelosi put on that kente cloth, though, and she knelt in the Congress building.
So Nick, would you elaborate on what you were saying, because some people don't know about that?
Hey everyone, yeah, if you did not hear that, this happened some years ago, but I think it was in response to the Black Lives Matter movement and George Floyd protests, but it was a PR move where several prominent Democrats in Congress put on kente cloth and then did a little kneeling ceremony in wherever it was in the Congress building. And you can find photos and stuff of that if you just search that online anywhere. But that was an example of exactly what Pastor Richard is talking about, in that it is they use the aesthetics of change whenever it is necessary, but they fundamentally have no desire to deal with the actual system that produces the results that we need in a real way. And that is why they are a more sort of veiled form of the same kind of racism, but it is a bit more subdued or more hidden, and that could potentially be more dangerous because they sort of use the appearance of being more progressive, etc., when they really do not want to make real change at any sort of real systemic level. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
explanation. Anyone else? Okay, that was in response to a question that someone sent to me this week. So we appreciate the answers there. Now, are there any other questions that may have come to your attention during the course of the week, or any comments that you'd like to make? Okay. I have one that I think is very interesting. I was looking at a study I was trying to pull together, and God almighty, I hope I didn't I forgot to write the verses down. Okay, I look at the wisdom that Jesus spoke, and I was actually looking at two lessons. One where he says, "The poor you will always have with you." I like to talk about that at some point because I think I see something in that. But I was also looking at in Haggai when God challenges men, the Hebrews, to build him a house, because he said you will have your paneled houses and you've yet to erect the house for me. You keep saying it's not time. And I was trying to make a comparison to that when Jesus talks about John in John 14, in my Father's house of many mansions. So I'm looking at that from the masculine, feminine perspective, right? And I'm trying to make sense of that so we could pull that together and make a discussion. And I brought it to Pastor's attention that I was kind of struggling with that a little bit, not seeing it. And he brought a couple things to my attention. And I thought it was interesting that he explained it to the class and look at it from a different perspective. Okay, Pastor, will you talk about what you were saying to me about the words of Jesus?
Yes. I do not believe that the words that are attributed to Jesus should be attributed to masculinity at all. The words that were attributed to Jesus, many of which came from the sacred writings of Kemet, are reflective of femininity as opposed to masculinity. When Jesus talks about how he longed to shelter Israel under his wing as a hen shelters her brood or her chicks. A hen is feminine, and what is being described there is a type of nurturing that emanates from femininity. And it is my contention that the words that were attributed to Jesus are, yes, indeed, words of wisdom with some changes or manipulation. However, I also believe that these words that are attributed to Jesus should have been attributed to a feminine deity. However, we know who wrote it. We know that there is no history at all of Europeans ever having a matriarchal society, a society where femininity is seen as the deity or the femininity is looked to for guidance. So when you say, when you made the statement about in my Father's house of many mansions, if we look at that based upon what came, the writings of Kemet, then we see that it is not father anyway. If you do it from the Aramaic, it's of womb, which is father, mother. If you look at it from spirituality, pure spirituality, it is feminine. It is not in my Father's house, as it is in the house of the divine. There are many opportunities to many spaces rather to live in. And then it says that it talks about I go to prepare a place for you, and where I am, ye shall be also. Now, when he talks about preparing a place, he's talking about in the community that lives within you, and this place is a place where you are prepared to receive, to embrace the reality of spirituality, which is actually feminine, dominated by feminism in terms of divinity. So all of these statements of Jesus are really nurturing, and it's talking about putting when we understand, or when we embrace who we are. This saying is that not so much I will come to you, as much as that where I am, you shall be also. You will be where I am. Spiritually, you will be where I am, and the I am of it all. It's not talking about being masculine. It is talking about the nurturing of femininity. It's talking about you will be in a place where you are, you are guided by wisdom. Why do I say this? Because if we look at Mayat is feminine, and the principles that were birthed out of Mayat are also feminine. So if femininity gives us the guidance in life, if femininity speaks to that, then how is it that femininity is not the words of Jesus supposed to be words that guide us? How is it that these words of guidance are not from the feminine, the divinity of femininity? How come that is not? How come that would be different? So the bottom line is this: the writings were manipulated, but not only were they manipulated in terms of their meanings and presentations, they were also manipulated in terms of gender, for the express purpose of men remaining in charge of everything. And I put in charge in quotations. The domination of masculinity has brought the world to a place of the borders of destruction. And I do not believe that as above, so is below deals with anything, well, it deals with what we see physically manifested only. As above, so is below speaks to us. And that is feminine, meaning that when our thoughts, when we embrace the spiritual beings that we are, when we begin to process spiritually as opposed to secular processing, then we are on the same wavelength. We are vibrating with, we are in rhythm with the feminine universe. And then the more that we are in vibrating or in rhythm with the feminine universe, the more we see that time is speeding up. And I've had people talk to me about that time is speeding up. And what I have seen in my discussion with them is that regardless of whether they go to church or not go to church, it doesn't matter. All of them all of them who normally, by me knowing them, were not even paying any attention. So I believe that this idea of time speeding up is a message to us. And that message to us is seen in the movements of the astrological bodies, the events that are taking place in regards to the planet, the moon, the sun, etc. These events are closer together than they ever been. And that is, to me, it's an indicator of the speeding up of time. And that doesn't mean that the earth is going to end, but it is going to, this consciousness is going to end as we know it now. Because when the faster time appears to be to us, then that means we're close to being the spiritual beings, we are closer to bringing the dominant forces and energy into this earth, which is righteousness. When that happens, that is when we begin to be, when we are able to observe the manifestation of as above, so is below. But every bit of it starts within us. And it does not take the whole of global humanity to embrace that. What it takes is a genuine desire by one person or three persons or five. It doesn't matter. That genuine desire is what ushers in what we are experiencing right now. So, and please understand something. None of what I have said is gender-based. Gender is a social construct. It is not a spiritual reality. Thank you. Questions or comments? I hope that makes sense.
Yes, sir. And I think the,
So
go ahead.
I have a question, comment. So just for people to be clear, there is no gender, but when you talk about femininity, you're talking about and there's no polarity either, meaning masculine, feminine, because they're unified, right?
Yes,
Um,
yes,
So when you're talking about feminine, you're just talking about that particular side of it comes into play.
yes,
Okay.
yes. It's no different than electricity. You have a feminine and masculine flow, but it will not, you cannot get a flow of electricity with only one of them. You have to have both.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would add to that, sort of masculinity and femininity definitely exist, but they are expressions of the one thing. They are not sort of absolute designations as they have been made in a state of spiritual ignorance as a result of only being aware of the physical nature of our experience. And they, the closer you get to the source, the less those things need to be and are distinct, and the more they merge back into the one thing that they are an expression of, is what I would say. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Nick.
So can it be then that we are to live from that feminine side? That's how we were designed. And the masculinity is the stuff that we have to do to exist here, like the physical type world, the actions that are done in that portion of your life. That is what that has grown out of proportion because we made it greed and selfishness and made that the more important part of who we are.
Yes, and we must take into consideration that the least important part of us is our bodies. And we spend more time with our bodies because we can see them.
Yeah.
Than we do with grooming our essence, our spiritual essence. When we groom our spiritual essence, then we are not concerned whether or not I'm being feminine or masculine. What should occupy our desires is to be one with uh, um, femininity if you see yourself as being masculine. Why do I say that? Because of the way we are wired. It does not matter what you think. It does not matter what society says. It does not matter what the social construct is. It does not change how we are wired. We are wired differently than those who are in a feminine body or a female body. We are wired differently. There is a reason that there is estrogen and testosterone. There's a reason for that. And that wiring is not done by us. It has been done by the universe, by the creator. That's who did it. And no matter how angry we get, no matter of how physically strong or mentally astute we think we are, you cannot change the wiring. And that wiring is that the feminine brain can use both sides, and the masculine brain has to focus to do it. It cannot do it at will, and it cannot go back and forth. That is one of the major reasons that when we have a discussion with females, that is the reason some of us come away with like, what was she talking about? Without even asking, what did you mean by it? We see things through the eyes of one who fix things. So if we see things as a fixer, and I'm talking about those who are representative primarily of masculinity, if we see ourselves primarily as fixers, then we see ourselves as primarily the warrior group, the spiritual warrior group. And the warring is on behalf of femininity. It is to protect, it is to make sure that the domain of spirituality stays intact. And what I mean by the domain of spirituality, regardless of where you go with indigenous people, if you talk with them before they came in contact with these European Christians, what you will find is that the context of their goddess came from the feminine, the female in the group, in the village. Why? Because of the way the female is wired. And in order for there to be a masculine being, it had to come from the womb of a feminine being. And coming from the womb of the feminine being tells us a lot when it comes to nurturing, when it comes to guidance, when it comes to traveling a journey along the pathway of life itself. It is impossible for anyone to embrace the reality of spirituality and at the same time reject the divinity of femininity. You cannot do that and expect to move progressively in terms of knowing who you are. You have to truly open yourself up. And one of the ways things I suggest very strongly is this: forget everything you've ever been taught. Open yourself up. Open the box, open the door, and allow spirituality to walk in. And when you allow spiritual concepts of truth and righteousness to occupy your thoughts. You may not understand it, but it will resonate with you. The reason that we had so many issues in church, and I mean the questions that we raised and the rejections that we experienced, the reason is because the masculine approach to what is called spirituality, which really is religion, the masculine approach to it did not make sense. And that's where our questions came from. It's something in us that's deeply seated. It doesn't make sense. However, when we start looking at spirituality in its essence, we begun to see that the femininity was the approach, because at early stages, we talked about how everything that is birthed had to be birthed from a womb. We talked about that in depth until we got or were guided to the space of Kemetic understandings. And when I say Kemetic, I'm talking about what is now called Egypt. When we begun to see the Kemetic understanding of spirituality, it is then that we saw that that femininity is divine in nature. The essence of femininity is the divine. And every group of indigenous people saw the divinity in femininity and embraced it, with the exception of those who were hell-bent on hanging onto a male-dominated concept of non-existence. Now, this thing called the church is in its last throes, because from the beginning of time, femininity has been the energy, the guiding force, and with our embracing it, because we were told to dominate, with our embracing it, with us, the males, and primarily the male representatives of masculinity, began to embrace not the necessity, not only the necessity of embracing femininity, but understanding the reality of what femininity is and loving every moment of it. It is then that our eye was open to the point where we could see. What did we see? We saw the importance of embracing femininity in our lives. And as a result, those questions that we had when we were in this masculine-dominated religion, those questions were answered. And the answers to the questions that we had did not guide us to a place that we thought it was. We had a truly spiritual serendipitous experience. Because I don't know about you guys, but I never thought that this journey would carry me to a place of seeing that Jesus never existed. So, having said all of that, if there are questions, I will entertain them. If there are comments, I want to hear them. Thank you.
So, good morning, this is Barbara. So, when we're talking about, as you were talking, I thought about the walls of Jericho and how the supposed walls of Jericho came down based on energy and vibration and the frequency of that energy and vibration. And so it's like it's a physical construct of a spiritual law, which says that when we vibrate, we are energy, and when we vibrate in resonance with the universe. The aspect of the universe is it's feminine in nature, and when we manifest those kinds of principles related to the universe, that explains then why physical kinds of supposed physical kinds of constructs or human constructs can't stand. They have to shatter. They have to fall. They have to dissipate. They have to disappear, because when you're aligned with the universe in terms of spirit, in terms of the frequency and resonance and energy, it all becomes, it's one. And so anything that's created or supposedly created outside of those boundaries dissipate, disappear, no longer are there. And that's the same thing for our minds and what we think. All of those barriers in our minds, whether it's greed or whatever it is, those intangible barriers in our minds that have been built up, all that baggage we carried for years and years and years, and sometimes centuries and centuries and centuries, and just dissipate in a moment once we align ourselves with truth and righteousness. So that saying, that's wordy, but that's sometimes I have to use the words to try to not adequately explain the spiritual aspect of what I'm feeling and saying. Thank you.
You don't need a disclaimer, Bob, with your statement about the words. I want you to see something that took place here. My statements were clarified and simplified, and the gaps were filled in by femininity. It takes both of us. It takes feminine and masculine energy to bring clarity to humanity, period. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Beautifully said. Thank you. Thank you both. Yeah, when Pastor and I were first talking about this, and he said that, the words in red to me come to life now. They more so than it ever has. That we are seeing clearly, and the walls of Jericho is a perfect illustration of that, perfect example of what is being said. So this is I think kind of life-changing as far as gaining understanding. Anyone else? What do you see here? What do you feel from this?
Before you move from that, Ron, let me say one more thing.
Yes, sir.
When I said to you guys, do not concern yourself with the rest of the words, only read what's in the red. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
I had no clue as to what I was saying until now. Until now. Because the red is the wisdom that was manipulated. And wisdom is feminine. Now I understand why that was necessary. I did not understand either when I said that if you come in here, I'm gonna take your Jesus away from you. I didn't understand what I was saying until recently, because I took Jesus away from me too.
Oh, you muted yourself for the last second or so.
Oh, okay. I see that. I'm sorry. That's all I wanted to say.
I have a question. This is Evelyn. Good morning.
Morning.
Barbara talked about the walls of Jericho, and she talked about, well, it talks about how they all shouted after going around in 7 times, I think. What's the significance of a shout? What does a shout do? When you shout, I know you vibrate, your voice, your energy goes out into the universe, which is you. But I see something there as well. I can't really put my finger on it or what's the significance of a shout? Does it open portals? Does it open you inside? Yeah. That's my question.
I don't see it as a physical shout, Evelyn. However, I'll let Barbara handle it, or look at that anyway, respond to that. Because I think she had some clarity on Jericho.
Well, let us see where we go. um, all of that is preference on intent. And we talked about that before. 'Cause, I mean, we can shout at a baseball game if you talk about a physical shout. We can yell and scream together as a crowd if you're talking about looking at a rugby match, or something like that. But this is talking about an internal kind of resonance and sound and vibration and frequency that aligns with the universe. And so that picture we got of the story where everybody shouted, I believe is more about everyone doing as we're doing, being on one accord, coming from one place with one desire. Our intentions are based on unicity and accomplishing the same thing, what's best for humankind, mankind. And so I akin that to when we meditated, when we were talking about, meditating on doing what we wanted from mankind, the same kind of thing. In essence, to me, that was a shout, because we were aligned in terms of our frequency with the universe. And so a shout is not necessarily something that's said with the mouth necessarily. It's said with the heart and the soul and the basic intent. Thanks.
Well, I didn't say it was physical. I said that I felt that there was more. It has to be spiritual, because when my mom transitioned on that night she transitioned, it was like I can't describe what came out of me that night she transitioned, but I know that something happened that night. So that's why when you talked about the walls and shouting, how the walls had come down, I don't know what had taken place in the universe inside of me on that night. So that's why I asked the question. I know things are physical, but I wanted more of the spiritual. And you told me what it was. So, yeah.
Well,
as above, so below. That I know.
Evelyn, my response wasn't necessarily targeted toward you as in terms of physical. I wanted to say it that way because when we think about the walls of Jericho, I was thinking about everyone else, that it is not physical. That's the reason why I said that, just to make that point, the very point.
No, it wasn't you to say that. Pastor said it wasn't physical, and I said, no, I know it's more than physical, because there's spiritual meaning behind everything. So yeah, I didn't say it was physical, but I knew that there was more. That's what I was talking about.
And my only point is to say
I didn't pick it up from you saying it's not physical. I simply started with the physical because that all of us are not where we are at the same point. And we're making the point that stories in the Bible say one thing, but as you already made the leap that there's a spiritual underpinning to that, I wanted to try to draw that comparison for those of us who haven't made that leap yet. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I heard you, and I appreciate the answer. Thank you.
And that was my intent as well. There was what happens. We can't. I don't want to start to assume that everyone understood the nature of the question. It is imperative to me anyway to make sure that when we respond to a question, we're not only responding to the person who raised the question, we're responding to people who may have never been on before. We're responding also to people who have not been able yet to see the difference. So when I said spiritual, it was for the same reason. I'm sorry, physical. It was for the same reason that Barbara did it. Going back, leaving the 99 and going back to get the 1, that kind of principle. Thank you.
This is Audrey. I wanted to add something to that because I kind of feel like what Evelyn was saying about opening a portal is kind of an important point, because not only did in the story, not only did they shout, but they marched around for 7 times. And I think the marching around was a kind of meditation that got them to the place where the shouting, whether physical or internal, did create a resonance with the universe, which was like a portal opening. But I think the meditation, walking around, helped to create that place where they could get to that frequency to connect with the universe for whatever happened to happen. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with you because the meditation sort of set the intent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It grounds you in our basic intent.
Well, we marched around the walls of Jericho. I mean, marched around the walls of Jericho with our desire for everything to be exposed.
Yeah.
We were on the same page. And the walls the spiritual walls that was hiding everything collapsed. And now the chaos is visible to everyone. And if the chaos is visible to everyone, and it came as a result of our desires, then the onus is on us to bring order to the chaos now. Does that make sense?
But we also do that with a desire and intent, right?
Yes, same thing. Yes. Yes.
Greetings, everyone. Exactly what I was thinking in regards to the meditation and with the walking around the walls as well as the shouting. I was thinking of it more so in terms of a energized meditation in a sense. So we talk about meditation, we're talking about at inward looking or inward concentration on a particular thing, which is the actual accessing the portal in a sense that Evelyn mentioned. When the shout, so meditation can be in motion. Meditation does not mean necessarily just being like completely quiet. is more so on the very, very sharp focus. In regards to the shouting, I was thinking, like I said, meditation, emotion, very, very energized in a sense of meditation where action is being taken, and that action is the source of it is actually coming from the inner being. And so in a sense, working in the same exact way that creation works, working in the same exact way that the physical earth is actually formed with that force, with that power. I'm finished.
Thank you, sir.
I think sometimes we don't recognize the fact that we not only I think we not look at the fact that we change. We talk about scripture being manipulated, but setting it all straight, setting it straight. Example, what you guys said without anybody looking that way. The shout talks about to give a blast. It talks about to sound an alarm or make an alarm. And it also talks about to destroy. So all that was explained tied into what that says and brings life to, just because going from looking at looking at scriptures and looking at a definition and trying to piece it together by seeing what the definition said. You've gone from that to actually being the definition and bringing life to what is being said, more so than the definition that the word first originally said. So all of that tied in beautifully, and it said what the definition is, that and more. You just brought life to it. So beautifully said.
And Ron, I
last
want,
thing.
go ahead, Sheldon.
So I was just going to add on to the last point that I meant to say. The actual shouting, what it does also for the participant and the participant in a sense, is that it allows them to touch in and feel and understand the power in which they are. So it's almost as if it works as an aid for the person to walk into that room in a sense. It's actually assisting them because they themselves are feeling the power and feeling energized as well while they're shouting.
Yeah.
That's all. I'm done.
And that's exactly where I was going, Shell. I was going to say we need to remember, we've said this once before, but you know how things just split until you have that experience. We are the portals. We are portals. Anytime that we are able to, as Sheldon just described, connect with and be open with and be one with the universe, we are a portal.
I see that very clearly. A portal for those who are seeking a way out of this chaotic society, a portal that they can enter and learn that the chaos is not ended by a vote, but is ended by desire. The clarity of the chaos is more evident now than ever before. And I don't want to get into political discussion at this moment. However, the depth of chaos is seen with both of the people who are vying to be president. the depth of that chaos has been exemplified. The chaotic lies and the representation of the death of an old society that perpetuates systemic racism. I'm done.
Good discussion. Maybe a good place to stop and reflect, okay? Unless there are questions or comments, you guys, anybody? Don't want to cut anybody off. But I think a lot has been said.
Are you able to see that? The representation of the chaos in this society. That was reflected between the two vying for president. Can you see that? Does that make sense?
Vividly, vividly.
Yes. It does.
Thank you. Right.
Pastor, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So are you saying, I don't want to say, are you saying, well, I don't know.
Just
Are
answer
they
them.
gonna die? Is the racism that they're upholding dead?
No, what I'm saying is that there had to be a picture of the chaos that we are experiencing and the source of that chaos. And that chaos is ending based upon our desires for harmony in the world. If America catches a cold, the rest of the world gets pneumonia. So when it ends here, it reverberates throughout the rest of the globe. So I'm not looking at their physical death, even though physical death is not the worst thing that could happen. I'm sure that Biden would rather have been dead than have go through what he did, especially when he looks at it again. So I'm not talking about that, even though if it happens, I'm good with it, however it happens. And you know, Evan, I'm good. If I'm good with my death, if it's going to bring order to the society, I'm certainly good with theirs when they are the source of the chaos, or representative of it anyway. Does that make sense, ma'am?
It does. Doesn't transition is sometimes, is it not sometimes part of an ending of an era, or physically? You know, you served your time here. Okay, now it's time for you to move on.
Yeah, see, when I look at this, I look at what they represent, not who they are in terms of their physical being. What energies, forces do they represent? And I said I didn't want to get into a political discussion, but Evelyn, you just led me anyway. It's what they represent. If you look at it, what you see is an abolitionist and a slave master. That's the energy. Biden is the abolitionist who say, wait, we're going to free y'all. We're going to give you equality eventually, but it never happens. Donald Trump represents the energy that's continuous slavery. So Biden is more eloquent because he's more deceptive. You have to be more eloquent in terms of your thinking. Now, his deliverance was nowhere near eloquent. That's not what I'm talking about. And Trump is just blunt. I don't like you, but I want your vote. He made that statement in the rally. I don't care anything about y'all. I just want y'all vote. And they cheated.
He'll give us black jobs, though.
And that's the ignorance. Because if you really look at it historically, the guys who owned slaves, they were poor. They lived off of borrowed money from the Jewish banks in New York. They had mortgages that they had to pay. They on the surface, they were super rich. But you can be that on the surface when you have enslaved people building your big house. You don't have to pay them. You can appear to be very wealthy, but they weren't. And then they'll find and to show how ignorant they were, the poorest people who had nothing, dirt farmers, are the ones who fought the Civil War for the people who they assumed was wealthy.
And still fight.
I get ready to say, that's what I see. That's what I see. I listened to Jaylen Brown give a lecture. For those who don't know, Jaylen Brown plays with basketball with the Celtics. And if you ever get an opportunity to hear him give a lecture, please give him your attention. I guarantee you, you will be not only moved, but you will be very well informed as to what he's talking about. I listened at him talk about the transformation from physical slavery to psychological slavery. And the first step towards that, as he said, is surveillance. If you keep people under surveillance, they are not going to be themselves. They are going to act a certain way. So if you keep people under surveillance, they're going to act the way that the society say they should act. And you think that, well, that's okay until you see how far that goes. That's why if you have braids, if you want some jobs, you got to cut your hair. Because this is a part of the surveillance that puts you in a space where you capitulate to what's going on around you. The process of surveillance pushes you. Then he talks about how it pushes you by virtue of how society trains you. You saw my athletes go through media training, and in media training, very rarely do they use any examples that look like you. They don't use Kareem Jabbar. They don't use people like Jim Brown or Muhammad Ali. They don't use them as examples. They use only the people who are docile, the people who encourage you to go along with society, stay out of politics, don't challenge anything. Those are the people who they use in that media training, which further enslaves the mind. So anyway, and out of that comes the support for the abolitionists or for the chaotic racists. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm done. That's that questions or comments, Ron?
Okay. Thank you, Evelyn. Anyone else, questions or comments? Evelyn, you good?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay, well, great discussion. We will resume tomorrow morning. Hope you have a great day. Enjoy yourself, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow, okay? Thank you.
Ron,
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
what about Monday, Pastor? This is
What
the
about-
week of the 4th.
Oh, no, we won't meet.
We will not.
Well, Monday, 4th of July is on Thursday, right?
Yeah,
Right.
Well, yeah, we'll meet Monday.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
thank you. all.
Let me
Thank you
say this.
very much.
Let me say this before you go. When we get to start canceling our meetings, I like to be reminded, and I'm very pleased with you reminding me. However, there are times when those breaks won't take place. And the reason I say that is because we are in a place of dire need for humanity. People are confused as to which way to turn, what to think, what to expect. They're afraid. People are afraid. Even though they say they are not, their actions and their speech dictates says that they are afraid. And if we are to bring order to the chaos, there will be times when we will not have a break. I remember very vividly that back in the day when we were doing what we were doing, when everybody was on holiday, we came together to chart our course after the holiday. And I'm saying holidays are for spend time with your family, but there are times when we have to come together to strengthen the families so that they can enjoy each other. Does that make sense? So we won't always be taking those breaks for holidays in the future. That's all I'm trying to say. But thank you, Kathy with the C, for reminding me.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyone else? Anything else? Right. You guys have a great day and see you tomorrow.
Sir. See you.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you.